so up and everything else. So I was like, what's going on? Okay.
We are live.
Greetings, iMore universe. This is the iMore show number 596, and we are going to talk about a potential Apple March event, Apple's interesting forays into China with iCloud, an iMac Pro review by our very own Renee Ritchie, and our favorite things of the week. So let's get started. Joining me today on the iMore show is, of course, Assistant Managing Editor Lori Gill. Hi, Lori.
What's up?
Just a dynamic duo today.
I know. Well, I think we might be hearing a little bit from Renee in a bit, but
yeah, it's
for
true.
now,
We're going to have a special guest / regular guest star Renee Ritchie of Vector and iMore Show and iMore come to pay us a visit to talk about his iMac Pro review, as well as some of the stuff happening around China and Apple. But before that, we should talk about the kind of the big Apple related elephant in the room, which is it's March 1st, and March is usually an event time. So we might very well have an Apple event. Is that true?
Well, I don't know if it's true, but it's not an unknown. This wouldn't be unusual for there to be an Apple event. We didn't have one last year, but we did have one in 2016. We had one in 2012, I think. I think of March events as a sort of a special, Apple has something that they really want to show us, and they don't want to wait till the fall to show it. So that's why we sometimes have them and sometimes don't. And there's a chance, especially when you consider the things that Apple has already announced that are coming in 2018, there's a chance that we're going to get a March event, I think. How about you? Do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I do think it's going to happen, partially because we are right up against the market for some new iPads right now. The iPad Pro, of course, has been out for a year now, longer if you consider its various iterations. There are features from the iPhone 10 as well as the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus that could very easily make their way over, including Face ID, which I think a lot of people would like to see. I don't know if we'll get the true depth camera on the iPads. I'm feeling like maybe on the iPad Pro, but definitely not on the base level iPad. But I don't know. I think that it has an appeal on the iPad in a different way than it does on the iPhone. Like, yes, Face ID is really nice for unlocking your phone, of course. And Apple's kind of has really promoted it with Animoji and with the front-facing camera. But with the iPad, I think that its sensors could be used from a more AR perspective. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I'm really intrigued that if Face ID does come to the iPad, how they might integrate it and what kind of work they're going to be doing with developers to show it off. Because I don't think if they do integrate Face ID, it's not just going to be like, Face ID, look at me doing a front-facing selfie with my 12.9-inch iPad. No.
Right. That's something that nobody has ever really sort of promoted, the idea of using the camera on an iPad for taking pictures and things like that. So the true depth camera seems unreasonable in a sense, as why would you use this technology? But you are so right. AR on with your big iPad screen, and you're able to look around and use your iPad screen to do things, that would be phenomenal. Things like IKEA's AR, room changing, decorating apps on iPad would be pretty awesome. You could just kind of see what your entire living room would look like on a big giant screen. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, I like the idea. So yeah, at first I was thinking, no, they wouldn't do true depth camera, but as soon as you said AR, it totally makes sense. That sounds like such a smart move on their part. I guess whether or not they're capable of making it happen in March is
and making really it happen with money. I mean, I think that's the biggest deal. Is the true depth camera is probably the most expensive part of the iPhone 10 outside of its screen. So putting it on the Pro, I feel like gives Apple kind of some leverage where they're like, the Pro's already expensive, guys. But the other thing I think might be interesting with Face ID, and this is kind of a left field prediction, I'd rate the chances of it actually happening around 20%. But we know that Apple's working on some improvements to its classroom apps, and 95 Mac came out with a couple stories with Guillermo digging through source code and being like, I wonder if we're going to get some class kit stuff with apps. And that led me down a rabbit hole of, I wonder if 11.3, like 11.3's big hidden feature is that you'll be able to do on the iPhone multiple face authentications for Face ID. But on the iPad, I wonder if that's a way to unlock different users of the iPad, right? Where every single user has their custom Face ID data. And I think that could be really cool. As I said, I rate it at about a 20-25% chance right now, just because Apple has yet to crack the multiple faces on Face ID. And I feel like they're going to need and it's also a fairly, it's a good chunk of data being held in the secure element. I don't know how much data that is and whether it would be feasible to do it on like a per student basis of a classroom. But that's my ideal, right? Is that forget having to like have every kid authenticate themselves with a passcode, but also being able to authenticate their face could be really cool. On the flip side, again, I'm like going back and forth here. Kids' faces are not as well defined as adults. And I also worry about the spoofing possibilities, especially if you have twins in your class. Like, there are some things that Apple would need to figure out. So again, likelihood of it actually happening in March, pretty low. But it does pique my interest. I'm like, could this be a hidden fun feature?
Right. It kind of sets the fantasy of where could this go if we have ClassKit, so that multiple users are able to access the same iPad. And then if you take into consideration the possibility of Face ID on iPad, and then you take that a little bit further and combine the two, we're talking about multiple Face ID on iPhone and iPad possibly. And you're definitely right. They can't possibly have perfected the software for facial recognition in children after just a few months of it being released. I guess it's possible, but it seems too soon for that technology to have been perfected. And children's security is the most important. So
absolutely,
they definitely wouldn't release something like that when it was still cooking. It would definitely need a little more time. But it's
intriguing, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it just makes you start thinking about all the things that could happen with it. It's pretty cool.
So let's talk a little bit about ClassKit and the potential of the classwork app, which of course 95 kind of discovered by digging around the 11.3 beta. Do you want to talk a little bit about ClassKit and what the goal for that?
Well, I know about it. I am reading 9to5 Mac's article right now as we speak.
Cool. Well, while you're reading, I'll go over some of it.
Okay.
So Apple already, of course, has the Classroom app. And P.S. joining us for the end of discussion here is Renee Ritchie. Hi, Renee.
Hi,
good
Renee.
To see you.
Hello.
So we're talking about the March event, Renee, and we're talking about Apple's potential, what Apple could potentially do on the iPad, as well as the scoop that 9to5 released today on potential of a classwork app and ClassKit. So what ClassKit is essentially an SDK that might allow teachers to develop basically miniature, like not quite apps as far as I understand, just kind of like lessons built almost kind of like a Swift Playground style thing that's built inside this hypothetical classwork app, so that students could do things essentially all in like a single app, and they could each have their projects and all of that. It's still very vague because obviously we're going off source code and hints in betas. But it is an interesting idea. I really like what Apple has been exploring in this avenue. And I know, we have a couple of friends of the show who are teachers, and I'm going to be really curious to hear their input on this and whether or not it would be something that they can actually use, those of them who do have iPads in the classroom, or whether it goes back to the original problem, which is there are just not enough iPads in the classroom that teachers and by association schools are kind of poor for this.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to consider. It's not easy to get funding for things like tablets, though it's gotten better. And I know that Apple is really kind of taking charge in the classroom setting. They're kind of and the Chromebook are kind of like the two biggest devices in classrooms right now. Having this class kit and classwork app option seems like it's going to be pretty cool if it can be used in the classroom. So it looks like there's two different screens that 9 to 5 Mac show. One of them shows browsing history. I'm thinking the teacher's iPad will be able to access or to sync the browsing history of ClassKit enabled apps. So if the teacher is in a specific app doing a specific activity, all of the children's apps will sync up with what's being done. That's what it sounds like. And the student settings, their information will show up. Their progress will show up within their own classwork app. So it seems like it's a way for teachers and students to be doing the same thing on an iPad without a teacher having to say, go to X app, open this, go to B, read C. The teacher can just open it, and all of the students' iPads will have the same screen in front of it, which is a great way to kind of get you to the next step without having to wait for everyone and try to help students that haven't figured out how to get there and things like that.
Yeah, I think it could be pretty cool. As I said, we'll wait until we hear more about whether or not it's actually showing up, for instance, and whether or not it appears at a March event. But I'm pretty excited about it.
So what kind of class kit settings do you think, or class kit apps do you think would be kind of part of this program? Clearly education apps, but what do you like? What do you think? Maybe like note taking apps, or do you think it would be more like digital textbooks?
Yeah, I think it's a wide variety, right? I think it's anything that a teacher could assign bits and pieces from. Like, for all we know, it could be as broad as, oh, go into Swift Playgrounds and do a lesson of Swift Playgrounds, and I can actually see your progress in my settings of like how far you are in this Swift Playgrounds lesson. Or it could be much smaller. It could just be, I'm going to build a tiny thing in the classwork app, basically. And I just realized that Renee has his second monitor as his giant TV screen behind. And it freaks me out for a second. I'm like, why am I on a screen?
Because your hat is just that cool.
High. It is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Whole Foods. Yeah, so I don't know. I think there's a variety of options there. We should talk before we spend the entire show on iPads and classwork. We should talk about the other potential things that might come at a March event. Pretty likely up on the scale are the new wireless AirPods case and the AirPower charging mat, which we saw previewed at the iPhone event last September. I'm pretty psyched for that, despite the fact that, like, I'll be honest, I haven't used my iPhone's wireless charge in a whole lot. I use it when I'm sitting at my desk and I just drop my phone on it, but I don't use it to charge overnight. But the AirPods, I feel like I use my AirPods a whole lot less often than I do my phone, where I'm like, I constantly feel like I have to have my phone next to me. But I would be so happy to just take this and just like drop it on a pad. And then when I get, ready to get out of the house, I pick it up and I know it's charged and I know I have full battery life. Because that's really the only thing that is like a small downside for AirPods for me, is that sometimes they last so long that I forget to charge them. And then I get out of the house and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to listen to my AirPods. And I pop the case open and it gives me this like sad little orange light. And then I pull it out and it's like 20% remaining in one bud. And you reenact the scene from Revenge of the Sith and the cringeworthy no. And
that's what I'm like with iPads all the time. They just last long enough that I never charge them.
and then you pull it out and you're like, why does this not have any charge left?
No,
What's going on? Yeah, I don't know. Laura, would you buy the new case and AirPower?
Well, definitely the AirPower, because that that's a given. If you have any kind of Apple specific Qi supported device, you're going to want the AirPower, even if you already have 4 different Qi supported chargers in your house. The case, on the other hand, so I agree, Serenity, that it would be so great to just toss it on a pad and let it charge. I just don't use my AirPods often enough. It's my laziness. I don't leave the house all that often, and when I do, I'm usually with people, so I'm not using headphones in any sort of way. My problem is that I go so long without using them at all that I don't know whether or not my AirPods have a charge at all, because it's been weeks since I've taken them out and tried to use them. So I like the idea of being able to just kind of set it on a charger every once in a while, but that for my personal activities, that's no different than just plugging it in, because I use them so infrequently. So I personally probably won't buy the case, because I'm going to guess it's going to be, it's not going to be $15. And, anything outside of that seems like, I don't need it. You need it, Serenity, but I don't think I need it.
No, and I think you're right. If you're at home most of the time, maybe AirPods isn't the perfect fit for you. And I think the case is rumored to be around $69 is the last piece of information I've heard. And yeah, that's a little steep, especially if we consider that I don't think we'll see new AirPods this event. I do think we'll see new AirPods before the end of the year. And if we have some little tweaks, like the rumors that we heard about last week, I'm more inclined, I gotta say, as much as I want the wireless charging and I want it now, I might be more inclined to wait just a tad and then get entirely new AirPods that have longer battery and maybe some.
That purchase makes more sense to me than just a $70 case, definitely, and especially if there's going to be some major changes to the AirPods, like maybe something a little more comfortable, or maybe like the ability to adjust the in-ear bud parts.
Mm-hmm.
I would buy $160 AirPod replacements with a charging case faster than I would buy a $70 charging case alone. Definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree. Renee, if you were just spending your money, we'll be honest, we know that we're both going to get some, but if you weren't doing this for work and you were just should I buy wireless AirPod case? Would you do that? Would you recommend that to the average bear?
No, I mean, I'm still depressed that AirPower has taken this long to come out and that we're talking about it at an event when it's already been at an event. And that always feels suboptimal to me. And the rumored price, I think, for AirPower is $200 or something anyway, or at least high $100. And at that price, I just wouldn't buy it. I like plugging my stuff in. I don't see an advantage to wireless charging. It's convenient if you just have something in your kitchen or your desk, you want to plonk your phone down, but I have a cable and I charge overnight and I'm fine.
Yeah, I tend to feel you. It's until wireless charging gets to the point where I can just set my phone down on my desk and the charger's actually underneath my desk. We have spatial charging.
Or it's just ubiquitous, every Starbucks and every restaurant and every taxi cab has it. Then I'll be happy.
Then it'll be a little bit easier. Yeah. So we'll see if we actually dive in. We'll cover it, but I'm not super feeling it other than the promise of having my AirPods charged.
If it warmed my coffee, that would be great.
There's a mug at Starbucks that does this, and I'm so curious. I might buy it just to review it.
But I want an Apple product that does 2 phones and a watch and AirPods and your coffee. I think that
yes, all of the above.
Does it use heat?
Yeah, Lori, so it's an insulated mug. I've got to look it up and find out some more about it. It's called Ember, and it sits on a little a wireless charging pad, and you control it via an app, and it will keep your beverage at the same temperature for as long as you would like it.
Like Costanza, where it has the smoke coming up, so everyone thinks you're working so hard because your coffee's always fresh.
Yeah. But seriously, the promise, the amount of times that I've sat down with a cup of tea and not drank it and then picked up and tried to drink it cold, but like it might be worth $80 just to buy that thing just to have a hot cup of tea.
My favorite feature of my kettle is the hold temperature, because I plug it in, I forget, I go back, it's cold. I plug it in, I forget, I go back. Now it's just whenever I actually remember to make tea, it's ready. It's the best thing in the world.
Exactly. So we could spend probably an entire episode talking about tea and coffee. So let's wrap up the event. Two other things I want to mention that are potentials. I haven't actually heard this rumored here, but I have to think if they're releasing a new iPad Pro, they're releasing a new pencil. Like that's just my gut instinct here. Like just a couple little tweaks. I'm not asking for anything
major. Can I have a
major.
pencil sketch that works with the iPhone?
No, I don't care.
Damn.
I mean, it would be nice, but I care more about the iPad.
Serenity, you've been begging for an updated Apple Pencil for quite a while now. I feel bad for you at how long it's been since it came out, and the suggestion, you have great suggestions for things that could be improved. But it's like Apple is not listening to you. I don't know. You're going to have to.
Well, I think they're listening. I just think that their roadmap's a little bit longer. I mean, famously, one of the first articles I ever wrote for Macworld was, "Hey, Apple, maybe you should make a pressure-sensitive stylus because all of the other people are doing it terribly." And that was in 2010. So, they took
God,
the
are they
ideas.
going to call it the number 2 pencil?
No. Boo. Get out. Never mind, Renee. You're uninvited to this podcast. It's not happening. But yeah, I would love to see an Apple Pencil with maybe a little bit like differing tips. I think would be really cool because the tips unscrew anyway. I would love to have tips that have like slightly different friction levels. So it's not a perfect solution. But it might help with the slipperiness of the pencil on the screen. We could see, honestly, a different oleophobic coating on the iPad, which is also potential. That could help the pencil without actually needing to upgrade the pencil's internals. But also having, like, if there is ever a device that cries out for wireless charging, the Apple Pencil is it.
Oh yeah.
So yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Now my old Apple
introducing
Pencil
the AirPower, and also it's compatible with Apple Pencil. I would buy that in a heartbeat.
I would do that.
I would buy that in a heartbeat. So, so that's kind of my like secret hopes. And going on to your secret hopes, Lori, I hear rumors in the wind of an iPad SE.
No, iPhone SE actually.
Yes, sorry, not iPad
SE.
iPhone SE. Yes.
Yeah. So these are all terrible rumors and not to be believed, but it's kind of the way the iPhone SE for me is the way Apple Pencil is for you. I want bigger and better. I feel like Apple can do it. And there has been some talk that an iPhone SE 2 is coming this year. There, at the same time, there's rumors that Apple is actually going to update its entire line of phones to be more like the iPhone 10, but in different ranges. So it would be let's call it the iPhone. I'm just going to make up these names: the iPhone 10 Plus, the iPhone 10 Standard, and the iPhone 10 low cost. And the low cost one would be
iPhone 10 minus.
The low cost iPhone would be basically the same as the current iPhone 10, but using different materials. So it's less expensive, more within like the $650 to $750 range. So if that's the case, that's a bummer because that means there's no room for an iPhone SE 2. But if that's not the case, it stands to reason. It's been 2 years. Apple can update the iPhone SE 2. There's 2 options. They can try to put in a lot of new features so that it's got a similar design as the iPhone 10, maybe edge display. I wouldn't say all of the features. I highly doubt a low-cost iPhone is going to have true depth in it because that's just too expensive. But then there's the other possibility, the more likely possibility that it'll get a new processor chip and maybe a spec bump on the front-facing camera, and that's it. Kind of a bummer if that's all they do, but I'm also such a proponent of the 4-inch form factor that I don't want Apple to just throw it away The current processor chip is 2 generations behind now. Even an updated processor chip would probably be the A10, not the A11, though I don't see why it couldn't be the A11. There is also rumors that it would get a battery upgrade, but the battery on the iPhone SE is really good, so that's almost not a necessity. It keeps a good charge, so I'd rather them put a little more time into a little more effort into like putting some cool new features on the SE than getting a better battery, just because I feel like the battery is already good enough. I want to see 3D touch on the iPhone SE so hard. I don't know why. I know the screen is small, but you can still do it. I don't think that it crowds the screen to have a 3D touch. I think that's the one huge feature missing from the SE that I wish Apple would add.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you. So hopefully we'll see an updated iPhone SE either in March or later this year. I'm with you, Lori. I think that most likely they'll probably keep the old school form factor for the SE until they figure out how to do it in a low cost fashion. So that's kind of what we're expecting for the March event. Before Renee has to go off and do many various vector video things, I wanted to get your take, Renee, on the whole China versus Apple thing that's been going on this week, because I paid a little bit of attention to it, but I don't quite understand, the ramifications on a global scale. So essentially, as I understand it, Apple is moving all of its Chinese customers' iCloud data to Chinese hosted servers. And there's some concerns about privacy and concerns about all of this. So Renee, why don't you break it down for us? Explain why this is a big deal, and also maybe why it isn't, why we don't have to worry so much about it.
Well, so it's a super complicated issue, and it's one of those issues where people can have multiple valid opinions, which are the kind of issues that drive Twitter and the internet crazy, because there must only be one truth, and it is mine. But what we're seeing is a rise in nationalism when it comes to data. And so beginning next week, Apple is required by Chinese law to move iCloud data to servers located in China that are owned by Chinese companies. And this has made a lot of people very concerned, because the Chinese government does not have a great history when it comes to respecting the privacy or under our beliefs, under our system, under our culture, sufficiently adjudicating the people that they tend to go after. So Apple is asking people if they want to have their iCloud services moved. If you say no, you can stop using iCloud. You can also say, I'm not a Chinese national living in China, and it doesn't apply to me. But you have to make a decision. If you don't, you'll just be given with that terms and conditions screen until you make a choice. And Apple could have pulled out of China. They could have pulled iCloud out of China. But there's a few things that are important to remember. One is that iCloud is not just a security and privacy system. It's also a backup system. And for millions of Chinese customers, the most important thing to them isn't having secure messaging, which Apple is still providing, and isn't having secure devices, which Apple is still providing. None of that changes under Chinese law, but just having the photos of their kids and their families and their vacations and all of that protected, their documents, the things that they're working on, all of that protected and backed up. And iCloud is still the easiest and best way for Apple customers to do that. And Apple felt if they yanked that service, it would actually put a lot of not private, but a lot of important data at risk. The other thing is we are seeing this rise of nationalism, and China from its side is deeply concerned that America is currently keeping the iCloud data and the iCloud keys for Chinese nationals, because they don't trust the NSA and they don't trust the FBI. And I think it's fair to say, regardless of what you believe about China, let's say that me as a Canadian, I think it's fair to say that given what we've seen of Snowden and the various reports since then, that there are legitimate concerns about how America uses NSA letters and uses FISA warrants. And I think we're going to see more countries. I don't think it's too long until France addresses this, and the UK, and we start seeing more countries. And we start seeing a time when everyone wants control of their own data, because it's super valuable. It's why Google and Facebook spend billions of dollars trying to take your data away from you, just in exchange for free services. And countries are waking up to how valuable that data is. So yeah, there's profound privacy implications, profound security implications, but it's a bigger issue than Apple. It's the issue of how our data is going to be both protected and preserved going forward.
So for Chinese nationals who have to make this call, Renee, what are the pros and cons of having their data locally stored in China? Like, how does that help them? But also, what are the things that they should be aware of?
So like I personally believe that all data should be kept in Canada, but that's just me. But I think if you are Chinese, I don't think there's going to be a huge difference day to day. There theoretically, I mean, according to Apple, again, Apple has hardware security on the iPhone. The passcode cannot be given out by Apple. They do not have access to that. A lot of the services are end to end encrypted, and there's no way of extracting the conversation between the two endpoints. But Apple does keep iCloud backups, for example, on servers, and the fear is that the Chinese government could either order the company in China to give those over or raid the company and get those. Apple says that they're keeping control over the keys and over the data, but Apple says that in the US too, and we've seen NSA letters and we've seen FISA warrants. So all of that should be a concern. I don't think there's a good alternative. If you stop using iCloud, there's Tencent, there's Alibaba, there's China Telecom. All of those have ties to the Chinese government. So I think it's really a factor of living in China, and it would be nice if there was an alternative for people inside China, inside every country, to do these things securely. But until Elon Musk builds us like an internet on the moon, and I'm not saying that facetiously, that is outside the jurisdiction of all these places, I don't think anyone's data is really secure.
Well, and then we have to worry about the tyranny of the moon government, so it's a whole different problem.
Those mole people are the worst.
Yeah, and in terms of, this isn't really on our topic list, but I feel like it's kind of related. We saw this morning about Celebrate announcing that they could unlock all iOS versions up to 11.2.6 and gain access to that. I feel like it's an important conversation to have about like where your data is located and how secure your data really is when there are companies who can brute force their way using high-end electronics and technology smarts into a phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cat and mouse game, and it's companies like it is companies like Celebrate, but it's also a bunch of bad actors, of hackers and nation states who are looking for zero-day exploits into iPhones, iPads, iOS devices, Android devices, Windows computers, Macs, everything. Incredibly valuable because it lets them collect data, and Apple has to find and patch them. I would like it if companies like Celebrate would disclose these vulnerabilities when they find them, but they would rather make money off of them. And all we can do is hope that Apple closes the door as fast as they can.
Yeah, I agree. Renee, before we let you go, yes. I want to talk really, really quickly about your iMac Pro review, yes. Which has one of the best worst titles that I've ever seen. The worst Mac Pro or iMac Pro you could buy. Go.
Yeah, I mean, Apple does this to us. Like Lori knows this full well, like you and Serenity too. Like they gave us the bottom end. They gave us the high end iMac at WWDC last year, but also the bottom end because they said they get a lot of questions and they see a lot of comments on iMore about like, can you use the low end version or is that just a dud that nobody really buys but lets them suggest a low price? So they thought it'd be fun to give me the low end iMac Pro and see if I could survive on it. And I really did. I edited every episode of Vector. If you go to youtube.com/Vector Show, every one of those videos was edited on the lowest end, the 8-core, the 1 terabyte, the 32 gigabyte, the AMD Radeon Pro Vega 56 graphics card version. And I played virtual reality games on the HTC Vive. I did everything with it. For me, I would prefer 2 terabytes of internal storage because Final Cut Pro is so thirsty for storage. But other than that, I survived brilliantly. And I think it's absolutely a viable alternative for people who want a workstation and want space gray, but don't want to spend a lot of money.
So what you're saying is the worst iMac Pro is still the best computer.
So if you have an iMac, if you care most about speed, the standard iMac still has the fastest standard and turbo frequencies. So if you're doing a lot of single-threaded operations, you're still better off with that. But if you want a bunch of cores, you don't necessarily need 18 of them, but 8 of them would be helpful because you're rendering a lot of podcasts, rendering a lot of video, and your time is more valuable than your money, then yeah, it's a safe bet.
It's really interesting to know. So really quick about the storage, because this is something I've been interested in. You have some external storage that's linked to your Mac, yep. But you found editing the video and everything else that you prefer to keep your files locally as long as possible while you're working on them, as opposed to offloading them to an external SSD.
I tried that, and like once I turned off optimized media, it was fine. Before I turned off optimized media, I would put like 2 gigabytes of files on there. Sorry, 200 gigabytes of files, and it'd become a terabyte like super fast. So I turned that off, and I I tried moving my library externally. I ended up moving my library back because I preferred the performance there. But I store the media files on 2 mirrored external drives just because I want to. Right now, it's like the drive is like 3/4 full again. I only have 2 projects on there, so I would get 2 terabytes if I had to do it over again. Just because that internal storage, like Apple is working real magic there. It is so fast. Anthony Casella, our resident IT writer at iMore, did not believe the numbers and spent an hour in terminal trying to prove them false, and then had to admit, no, they really are that fast, and just walk off shaking his head.
Can we get Anthony to write a story about that? Because that's hilarious.
Yes.
Like I tried to dig into Apple's terminal to prove, and no.
No, it's a great machine.
Yeah. Well, thanks for making me want a new desktop. Damn it.
You're welcome.
No, I don't need a new desktop.
No, you don't need a $5,000 iMac Serenity.
I really don't. I'm okay with my 21.5, and for video editing, I've got my handy dandy MacBook Pro. So
yeah, we should do a show on video editing at some point. I need to learn more.
We really should. Maybe that's next week.
Okay. Okay. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for popping in, Renee. It's always good to see you.
Lori.
And have fun chatting on with folks on Vector. You can see what Renee is doing after this podcast when he releases his next episode of Vector, which is youtube.com/Vector Show. And of course, you can find our lovely editor at large on iMore.com.
Thank you so much. Bye, Lori.
Bye, Renee. Oh man, Lori, I am really tempted to get an iMac Pro.
Don't do it.
I don't need it. I have so many other things I could spend money on, like that Ember mug, like that coffee mug.
Exactly. Exactly. For $5,000, I mean, that's a down payment on a car at that point. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So we still have one more thing to talk about, but before we do, normally, of course, our dear friend Micah Sargent takes this break, but I'm going to take a stab at it. We're going to take a break to tell you about our fabulous friends at Thrifter, who are thankfully sponsoring the show. Thank you, Thrifter. Thrifter is an awesome website. If you've seen the show before, you've heard us talking about it, where you can find deals on pretty much everything, but they're not the kind of crappy, like $1 off deals that you might find at other sites. Thrifter is all hand curated, so people go through a ton of deals, and then they're like, these are the ones that we think might actually be interesting. So Lori, I'm going to have you, as usual, go over to our lovely Thrifter website and find a good deal that speaks to your heart. I'm going to do the same.
I'm on the site right now, and I'm seeing a couple of different good-looking deals. You know, actually, this has been up for a while, but I don't think we talked about it last week. If you prepay for a 3-month subscription of DirecTV Now, you get an Apple TV 4K. And this came up once a long time ago. I'm not even sure if it was DirecTV Now the last time, but I wish Micah was here to talk about it. He did something similar, maybe not with the same service. I honestly can't remember. Where it's about this. It's like slightly less than the price of an Apple TV 4K. And you get a 3-month subscription. You get 3 months worth of DirecTV Now. So you're basically getting one of them for free, and you can cancel your DirecTV Now subscription after you get, after your 3 months, and have an Apple TV 4K, which it's kind of a great deal. You get one for free, and you don't have to continue paying for the service if you don't want it. So that's actually a pretty great deal. If you don't already have an Apple TV 4K, why not get 3 months of DirecTV Now for the same price, and then get rid of DirecTV Now if you decide you don't want it afterward?
Yeah, it sounds like it's more or less the exact same price of paying for DirecTV versus everything else. So, gosh, there are a couple. I clicked on a bunch of deals right now. I'm going to go again with the oddball pick first, which is that currently Amazon is selling Life straws at $5 off. If you've never heard of a Life straw before, it's this ingenious piece of technology that's essentially like a special carbon filter that allows you to drink out of any water.
This is perfect for camping.
Yes, exactly. And it's also perfect if you have emergency supplies kits in your house, which I do. I live with a guy who's in the military, so we definitely are prepared for emergencies. But he had never heard of this until I found out about it at REI. And once I found out about it, I became obsessed with it because I'm like, this is such a cool idea. And they're cheap, you know, they're not like super expensive. You know, you think about like the UV water, you know, sterilizers and all these fancy things you can get. But LifeStraw is essentially a really, really smart personal filter that allows you to drink up to 3,000 liters of water from when you're camping. And like, the picture on Thrifter is very nice of this person drinking from this beautiful clear stream. But the pictures they actually show on like the LifeStraw site are people drinking out of like swamps, right? Where they're just like, you can drink out of the dirtiest water and still get yourself hydrated and not worry about like catching any kind of horrific bacteria. So as somebody who's like a pretty avid outdoors person, and also just likes being prepared in the event of like something terrible happens, like an earthquake prevention, it's, you know, it's really good to have these kinds of things available and in your kits. So I recommend that everybody should have at least one because they're cheap. They're normally $20 and they're $15 on Amazon. And I think they're really cool.
Yeah, that's such a brilliant idea. I am definitely going to be adding that to my list of camping or my box of camping gear. And actually, maybe I need two of them, one that I stick in my camping box and one that I keep around the house with me because of that same issue of, well, what if something goes wrong and there's no more fresh water?
Yeah, earthquake prevention.
Yes,
you never know.
Exactly.
I know you're not quite on the fault line, but you know, it's always good to be prepared.
We do get earthquakes, and I actually have this huge fear of earthquakes because when I was a kid, living in Southern California, there was a couple of major earthquakes. I never saw any damage, but you know, when you grow up and things just randomly fall off the shelves, you know, bookshelves fall over. I have a fear of earthquakes. So yeah.
You learn pretty quickly. Yeah. Also as a Southern California kid. And the last deal I want to highlight is actually a deal I took advantage of a few years back when it was on meh.com. But now it's on Amazon's Gold Box deals. And that's Amazon is selling a refurbished Dyson Ball animal vacuum for $230. It's usually almost $400, and it comes basically with all of the extra tools you might need if you have an animal in your house, as well as just being a really, really baller, like literally baller, it's a giant ball, vacuum to clean your house. I have this exact model and I adore it. Like it saves my bacon on a regular basis, and I have two medium-sized pit bulls who love to shed everywhere. So I give it 2 thumbs up, and I'm kind of like seeing that on sale. I'm like, well, I have to bring this up because if you're looking for a new vacuum and you don't like, you want something heavy duty, you don't necessarily want to go with like a more pricey stick vacuum or a cordless vacuum. This thing is amazing. Like,
and that discount price. So Dyson makes a fantastic vacuum, but it's pricey. It's a premium vacuum, and that price is incredible. I have a Dyson. Mine is a slightly different model, but it looks very similar to the one in the picture, and it sucks up the dirt. And I paid closer to $400, I think, for my Dyson. So $170 is an unbeatable price. That's a really good deal. If I didn't already have one, I would literally be buying that right now.
Yeah, it happens. All right. So thank you very much, Thrifter. Hopefully you guys can find some deals that you dig as well. For our last topic, let's dig into some of the releases of the week. So we did get Apple coming out this week announcing that it's announcing an announcement that they've already talked about, but their snowboard and skiing features are finally live for tracking activity on the Apple Watch. And moreover, they're live with some fantastic third-party app support. So friend of the show, of course, who makes Slopes, that was given like a big prominent spotlight, which I thought was really cool, where I was just like, hey, I know that app. That app is great. And yeah, I'm still bummed that there's no skating option. Not really. It's just another. But I'm hoping. I'm like, all right, we're getting into snow sports. Maybe we can.
And snow, other than the downhill aspect of it, snowboarding and skiing isn't that much different than skating. So yeah, we're headed down the right path, right? Like it's just
skiing down the right path.
We're skiing down the right path. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you planning on any ski trips anytime soon? I know that you're very close to lots of winter where you are.
Yeah. Well, Renee has proposed that we go on a little ski excursion with, of course, Anthony Casella and Georgia Dow, who are also iMore writers and friends of the show. And we might go and film ourselves being ridiculous and testing things out. I'm a little trepidatious because I haven't skied since going to Mammoth when I was 13. Where I was like, yeah.
That's about the last time I went to, and I did terrible at it.
I loved it. Like I went from bunnies to diamonds in like 3 days flat, and I was like, yes, this is the best. And then one of my skis fell off right on top of a diamond that was above a double diamond half pipe.
Oh,
so
no.
I just had people like flying over my head while I'm trying to put the ski on, being like, I never want to do this again.
Oh, that sounds so terrifying.
Yeah. So I remember it being really fun until that point. So we'll see. I think I might just stick to bunny slopes.
And just sit in the ski lounge or the ski lodge while the rest of the team goes out and breaks
I'll
their
do the
neck.
video editing. They can be badasses on the slope. It's one sport that I'm not super interested in. I'm like, I'll drink my cider and read a book and draw on my iPad and you guys can jump things. Have fun on your moguls. Pretending to be Winter Olympic athletes. Yeah. So one thing I might do with this actually is I'm very tempted to take slopes to the skate park and run a snowboarding workout while I'm doing half pipes, just to because I'm curious because it does record like air and elevation and things like that, and I'm like,
see how it works. See if you can kind of manipulate the data a little bit. It probably wouldn't be perfect, but
it's not perfect. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, it's worth a shot. It's worth some experimentation. What is the exercise? Like, do you have any exercise features that aren't there yet that you really want Apple to add?
I don't know if you know this, but I don't exercise. I don't know. Because there's really no way to track hard mosh pit dancing or anything like that. So
actually, you know what? There should be a dance workout. Like there's an other dance workout, but there's no, like, they don't actually track. I don't know how you would track dancing, but I feel like that's a fun challenge because so much of us do it. Actually, what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see passive dancing, like have them recognize a little bit better when you're dancing and when your heart rate's up and what activity you're doing, like an auto start feature almost. Yeah,
because dancing is probably the most activity that I do, and it's a workout. Like it gets exhausting pretty fast. So
100%.
I think I might go dancing more often if I could track my dancing activities and see how many calories I've burned doing it, because that would make me more excited because I'm actually getting exercise. Or it would help me see that I'm getting exercise, which would encourage me to go dancing more often. So
exactly. That's a good one. Positive reinforcements, and it builds habits. Get on that. It's a good idea.
Yeah. Dancing tracking.
All right. Dancing tracking. To close it all out, let's talk about our favorite things of the week. And a really quick note to Google came out today with what they're calling us. Well, they're not calling it. The press calling it a Slack killer, which is Google Hangouts Chat, which is taking the Google Hangouts infrastructure and the GChat infrastructure and trying to make it into a Slack group. Or like channels for.
So what I've read about it's only available for organizations that pay for, I think it's called G Suite, which is a great. So my significant other works at a company. They use the G Suite, and it's great for them. It's a very small organization, and they work within all the different, Google Docs and things like that together, and they have to use Slack for their chat. So if this is just sort of incorporated into something that a Google, like a G Suite team is already using, it really sounds like a great addition. So they don't have to add on another business chat channel. They can have within their own, thing they're already paying for, a business chat that they can use. I don't think this is going to be widespread. I definitely don't think it's going to be a Slack killer, just because a lot of the organizations that use Slack are probably not Google or G Suite users. Or actually some of them are, but I don't think that that's going to be a huge difference. I think organizations that are already using Slack but also have G Suite probably won't transition over, just because they're already comfortable in the Slack environment. And to the organizations that are only using Slack because they don't have an alternative, that's going to be great for them, and it's going to be awesome, but it's not going to have this sort of widespread effect where everyone's going to switch over to Google Business Chat. I'm not sure what they're calling it, but I don't think it's going to be a major shift in the business chat world. But I do think it's actually going to be really beneficial to some of those organizations that work within the G Suite framework, to just have an extra feature that will help them continue their business dealings with each other without having to go outside of their kind of program stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And the weirdness of Hangout and GChat kind of melding over the last year, I know it's made a lot of people, put a lot of people off. So I'm wondering if this added level will help ease those tensions and make it a little bit more comfortable. But I don't know. In my mind, anything that's still browser-based, it's an extra hurdle for me to jump over to use it, because, I mean, yes, the Slack app is basically a web app on macOS, but it's still there. It's still an app. I don't have to open a browser or keep a tab in Safari open or use Fluid to create an app out of my browser window. I'm waiting to see how that all shakes out. I think it's still early days yet. So, yeah. So with that, let's talk about our favorite things of the week. Lori, what did you see this week that really made you excited?
I have been heads down in so much stuff. I try not to talk about Animal Crossing Pocket Camp because it's the Pokemon Go. It's like the new Pokemon Go. But I've been playing it, since it started, and I know I've talked about it way too much. They have just unlocked another event. It's another flowering event. So I've been sort of obsessed with playing it lately. They also added a couple new features where you can change the background of your campground. And within the game itself, the seasons changed. So it's been snowing in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp for months now. And just about a week ago, it turned into spring. And it was the greatest thing to open up the game and see the season change. So that's kind of my big thing for the week of getting to have the season change in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Your turn. I think I have. Oh, you know what? Actually, let me talk about this real quick. I didn't know that you can use Apple Music on Xbox One, and Matt Brown did an amazing guide on how to set up Air Server and connect it to your phone and your Xbox One so that you can play Apple Music through your Xbox One. So if you have Xbox One and you use Apple Music, guess what? You can play your Apple Music through your TV without needing something like, a HomePod or Apple TV or something like that. You can just use your Xbox One. I think that's a really great thing that I never knew before. So big news.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by that. So I'm going to go with something that I already talked about on this show, which is the Ember Bug. I saw this at Starbucks today and I was like, what is this creature? And now I have moved forward to the point where I'm like, yep, I think I'm going to buy it. I think I'm going to get the mug that keeps your drink hot no matter what. And I will write a review on iMore, and I'll let everybody know how cool or not cool it is, because it is very intriguing to me, I gotta say.
So it looks like you don't have to you can order it directly from Ember, and it looks like it's been out for a while. I guess they just started carrying it at Starbucks.
Yeah, they just started carrying it at Starbucks, and they came out, I think, last December with the mug version. There used to be a travel mug version that was like $130, $140, and this one is only $80.
The ceramic mug version, I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty. I would drink out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I think you need that. I think I need it too, but I think you need it for sure.
Yeah.
And just to be sure, is it wireless?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's there's a little thing that you can there's a thing that you sit it on to charge it, I think.
Plate. It looks like a plate, yeah.
Yeah. But the mug itself is wireless.
Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah. And there's an Apple Watch app. What? Okay. We're gonna get off of this call, and I'm gonna go to Starbucks to work, and then I'm gonna buy one of those.
I'm probably gonna buy one myself. Next time you see us, we're both gonna be drinking out of our Ember mugs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that just about does it for this edition of the iMore Show. I want to thank Lori Gill for being an awesome co-host, and of course, Renee Ritchie for popping in and telling us his thoughts about China and the iMac Pro. I also want to give a big thank you to Thrifter.com for sponsoring this show and keeping us in Google Hangouts. I was like, keeping us in clothes? I don't know. Keeping us in Ember mugs.
Yes.
Yeah, get us a deal on Ember mugs, Thrifter. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for hanging out with us for another hour of your life. Listen to us talk tech. As always, if you have thoughts, comments, suggestions about what you would like from the iMore Show, feel free to drop us a line. Lori is Appaholic on Twitter. I am Saturn on Twitter, and iMore is at iMore on Twitter and Instagram and all of the things. And you can also drop us a line on iMore.com or in our forums. So until next time, thank you so much, and catch you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm waiting for the light.